Today's video is a continuation of the exposed coil bowl that we started yesterday. Up next, we will add a few more layers, creating a pattern in the exterior. In part 1 of this video tutorial, you started creating your bowl by rolling out a slab, creating a slab base, rolling out 2 coils, and attaching them all together in a bowl. The inside of the bowl should be smooth and seamless as we begin part 2. Start with rolling out a few more coils. Mold the clay into the right shape first by squeezing and rolling the clay between your palms. Then use the table to continue to roll out the clay. Use the palms of your hands to travel the length of the clay from your fingertips to the bottom of your palm. Be sure that you have cleared a big space for rolling out your coils on the table so that they can roll in full rotation and not become flat. Your coils should be an even thickness. For this project, I am aiming for a thickness between the size of my thumb and my index finger. If your coil becomes too thin in one section, you could cut off that piece and use it as a separate coil, especially for the spirals. The next layer that we create will have a series of small spirals, so you don't necessarily need a long coil. You could get away with using a few small ones too. To prepare my coil to spiral, I clean up my end and then curl it into the clay like a cinnamon roll. Then I cut the spiral. In this next step, I see what it looks like inside of the bowl, and then I tried to eyeball how many I would need. And in the end, the number that I used was 11. If you use larger spirals, you're going to need less. If you use smaller ones, you're going to need more. So keep that in mind when deciding what size. I'll repeat the steps again for another spiral and then use the first to replicate the size. Right there, I'm using it to measure the size I need. And I'll do that with every step, replicating the size of the very first one. It will make a big difference if your coils are not even in thickness, so be sure that you practice getting nice, even coils. Make sure that your clay stays plastic, otherwise it will crack. Add water as needed. A damp sponge works wonders. Let's speed this up just a little bit. If you need to, you can pause the video while you make your spirals. Make sure your spirals don't dry before the next step. You can place them inside of a plastic bag. This will keep them from drying and allow them to be plastic for when we blend the backs of them. And that's exactly what I'm doing in this next step in the video. I'm scratching the back of the clay and allowing part of the spiral to blend in, and I'm erasing all of those seams so that the interior of the bowl can be smooth. So we're doing that to one side while the other side stays spiraled, and then we're going to attach it to the bowl. I know I've said this before in previous videos, but I always like to scratch the surface and allow that excess clay to fill in all of those gaps, and it leaves a really nice blended surface once I clean up that area and smooth it in. I'm going to repeat this step for each one of the spirals, and in retrospect I wish I would have done all 11 of the spirals at once, but I think I have about 5 or 6 here that I'm going to do, and in just a few minutes I'm going to attach them, and afterwards I'm going to roll out another coil to create more of the spirals. So you're going to see a lot of the same steps repeated in the next few minutes. Keep an eye for scoring and slipping, and watch how I blend these spirals into the rest of the bowl. As I'm attaching the spirals to the rest of the bowl, I'm being mindful about those little gaps that are between each spiral, and I can use excess clay to fill in those gaps and to make sure that there are no holes and there are no seams. You need to make sure the entire interior is well blended. In this next step, I'm going to roll out more coils and create more spirals. Blend the backs of those spirals and ready them for attachment as well. Feel free to pause the video at any time so that you can have the time to create those spirals, to blend in the backs of them, and prepare everything for attachment. As you watch me create the next coil, I think this is a step that's worth mentioning again. My coil got flat, so I flattened the coil on all four sides and then created a square shape instead and twisted it, allowing it to roll more easily. Try it out. I really think this is helpful. I explained it a little better in the first video, so watch that one if you need a little bit more of an explanation on how to do this. Watch the thickness of your coil. If it got thinner on one side and is thicker on the other, then focus your energy on thinning out the side that's thicker. This will give you a nice, even coil. Be sure to score and slip really well, this way your bowl won't fall apart. And notice that my spirals are a little bit above the lip of the bowl that I'm using to support my clay bowl, and that's okay. I'm going to make my clay bowl a little bit taller than the bowl that I'm using, and as long as I'm careful, I should be okay. I'm using a wooden rib to smooth out and blend the surface. You can use whatever tool you have on hand, but given that it's almost Halloween around here, I know that they have pumpkin carving kits in the stores, and it would be perfect to find one of those little spatulas. The ones with the teeth would be perfect for scratching the surface, and then the smooth, rounded ones would be perfect for smoothing it out. So if you could get your hands on one of those, I think you'll find them really useful for ceramics. We are finally moving on to the next layer. We're going to create little spiral balls of clay and put those in between each of the spirals. This will help us to seal everything up, and it'll look really nice as part of the aesthetic of the exterior. Once you finish rounding the last little ball of clay, you can spray them a little bit, add a little bit of water if you need to, and then score to release some of that clay. Some of you are using toothbrushes or forks, whatever you have on hand that can do the job. Make sure you're scratching everything up so that you can use that clay to fill in those gaps. I create a little bit of pressure above it just to secure it in place. Sometimes I use the excess clay to fill in any extra gaps. And then I'm going to take my other rib and blend everything in, and you take whatever tool you're using to create that smooth surface. Let's get to work on that final layer. I'm going to clean up my surface so that I'll have a nice clean table to roll out one last coil. I'll keep this in real time so that you guys can see all of the steps one more time in case you need to practice coil making a little bit more. That twist that you saw there really does help to keep that coil nice and rounded. I should have cleaned my table earlier. It was so much easier after I cleaned it. For this last layer, you are going to need a longer coil, so make sure that you keep it nice and even. I'm going to measure it. And I just take my straight edge and cut straight down. We're going to attach those two ends. By scoring and adding a little slip. Make sure to blend the coil so that it's seamless. This will create a nice slip. This is the last layer, so we want it to look nice and polished and finished. I'm going to score the surface of the bowl just a little bit at the rim where I'm going to attach. Be careful to support, especially the spirals, because they're small and fragile. I'm going to add a little slip. Then I'm going to attach the coil. And of course I'm going to use my serrated rib to scratch the surface, release the clay, and use it to fill in any gaps and seams to make the surface smooth and the interior secure, watertight, and finished. Let's speed this up a little bit. Take some time after blending the interior to focus on the lip. Remember, that's the last layer, so it needs a little bit more love and attention. That way your piece can look finished and polished. Once you're finished cleaning up the lip and smoothing out the inside, you can allow the clay to dry until it's leather hard. At this point, you can take the clay out of the bowl and smooth out any imperfections on the exterior. You can also add other features like creating a foot or even adding holes to make it into a planter. Thank you so much for joining us for part 2 of this demonstration. I hope that you enjoyed creating, and I hope you made something that you are proud of. See you next time.